He disgraced a black intern. Hours later, she fired him on the spot. Katie C. Sloan had exactly 3 days left before the announcement. 3 days of invisibility, of being called sweetheart and the new girl, of fetching coffee and taking notes no one would read. She was the incoming regional director, hand-picked by the board to transform the company's toxic culture, but first, she needed to see the rot for herself. She'd chosen the name, Kate, and wore Target blazers instead of her usual designer suits. She carried a worn leather portfolio and kept her head down, observing. The discrimination wasn't subtle, she'd been interrupted in meetings, had her ideas dismissed, watched colleagues speak over her as if she were furniture. Today, she stood in the copy room, 3 floors below the executive suites where her real office waited, gathering incident reports she'd personally documented. Johnson Miller, senior operations manager, swaggered past the doorway, then backed up. His eyes swept over her with casual contempt. "You're in my way," he said flatly, not bothering with pleasantries. Katie stepped aside, her face neutral. But she was watching. Always watching. Johnson Miller had worked Atterson and Associates for 12 years, and he wore those years like armor. At 43, he'd mastered the art of corporate survival, knowing exactly how much respect to show those above him and how little to spare for those below. Katie had been observing him for 2 weeks. She'd seen him charm the VP of sales with golf stories, watched him dismiss a female analyst's suggestion only to present the same idea as his own 30 minutes later. She'd documented 6 separate incidents of him forgetting the names of junior staff members, but only the black and brown ones. This morning's staff meeting had been typical. Johnson held court at the conference table, his voice booming over everyone else's. When Katie, as Kate the intern, had tried to present the market research she'd compiled, he'd cut her off mid-sentence. "Let's let the people with actual experience handle the analysis, sweetheart," he'd said, his smile sharp. "Why don't you make sure we don't run out of coffee?" The room had gone quiet. A few people shifted uncomfortably. No one said anything. Katie had smiled politely, gathered her papers, and left the room. She'd added the incident to her growing file on Johnson Miller. The file was now 17 pages long. She was 3 days away from making it matter. The afternoon client presentation was supposed to be routine. Katie had been assigned to support the team, which meant she'd done most of the actual work while Johnson took the credit. She'd prepared the slides, compiled the data, and created the financial projections. Her name appeared nowhere on the presentation. The clients, 3 executives from a Fortune 500 company considering a multi-million-dollar contract, sat on one side of the conference table. Johnson positioned himself at the head, with Katie relegated to a chair against the wall, where support staff belonged. 15 minutes into the presentation, one of the clients asked a complex question about the demographic breakdown in the market analysis. Johnson fumbled, his confident facade cracking. "Let me pull up those numbers," he said, clicking through slides with increasing desperation. Katie knew exactly where the information was, she'd built the appendix specifically for questions like this. She stood quietly and approached the table. "Mr. Miller, it's in the supplemental." "I don't need your help," Johnson snapped, not looking at her. "Go back to your seat." The clients exchanged glances. Katie remained standing. "Sir, I can." Johnson wheeled on her, his face flushed. "Did I stutter?" "You're here to watch and learn, not to interrupt. You people always think you can just insert yourselves into situations above your pay grade." The silence was absolute. "You people." Katie felt every eye in the room on her. One of the clients, a black woman in her 50s, stared at Johnson with undisguised disgust. Johnson seemed to realize his mistake, but instead of apologizing, he doubled down. "I mean interns," he said quickly, his laugh forced. "You interns need to learn boundaries. Now sit down before you embarrass yourself further." Katie's hands were steady as she gathered her materials. Her face remained professionally blank as she walked back to her seat. Inside, her fury was nuclear. She'd just witnessed Johnson Miller commit career suicide. He just didn't know it yet. Katie walked directly past her desk, through the main office, and into the emergency stairwell. She climbed 2 flights before stopping, ensuring she was alone. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding. Her phone was in her hand in seconds. She dialed from memory. "Robert? It's Katie. We need to move up the timeline." Robert Chen, the CEO who'd recruited her, answered immediately. "What happened?" "Johnson Miller just used, 'you people,' in reference to me in front of the Brennan clients. After telling me to sit down and know my place." Multiple witnesses. A pause. Jesus Christ. It gets better. He'd been fumbling a question I could have answered, but he refused my help because I'm just an intern. The clients looked ready to walk out. "Where are you now?" "Stairwell. East Tower. How do you want to handle this?" Katie's voice was ice. "Move the announcement to today. 4 o'clock. Executive boardroom. Make sure Johnson Miller is in that room. Tell him it's mandatory, something about restructuring. And Robert? Have security standing by. Consider it done." "You sure about this timing?" "I've been documenting systemic discrimination for 3 weeks. Johnson just handed me the perfect case study for why this company needed intervention. If I let this slide, I lose credibility before I even officially start." "Agreed. I'll send the meeting notice in 10 minutes. Katie. Give him hell." Katie allowed herself a cold smile. "Oh, I intend to." Within 15 minutes, the email went out. Mandatory executive meeting. Time, 4 p.m. today. Location, executive boardroom, 23rd floor. Attendees, all senior managers and above. Subject, critical organizational announcement. Note, attendance is non-negotiable. No exceptions. Johnson saw it on his phone and frowned. Mandatory meetings were usually reserved for layoffs or acquisitions. He pulled up his recent performance reviews, all excellent. His projects were on track. He had nothing to worry about. If anything, maybe this was finally his promotion to VP. He'd been angling for it long enough. He leaned back in his chair, already imagining his new office on the executive floor. By 3 o'clock, Johnson had told the story of putting the intern in her place to at least 6 different people. "You should have seen her face," he laughed, perched on the edge of Marcus's desk. "She actually thought she could correct me in front of the Brennan people. Can you imagine?" Marcus, a project manager who'd been with the company for 5 years, shifted uncomfortably. "Man, I don't know. That seemed kind of harsh." "Harsh? It's called maintaining professional hierarchy. These interns come in thinking they know everything. Someone needs to teach them how the real world works." "You said, 'you people,' though." Johnson waved it off. "I clarified. I meant interns. People are too sensitive these days. Everything's a microaggression." He made air quotes around the last word. Across the office, Katie sat at her intern desk, appearing to work on spreadsheets. In reality, she was reviewing the termination paperwork that HR had just sent to her personal email. Everything was in order. Johnson's personnel file, including 3 previous complaints that had been quietly buried, was devastating reading. She glanced at the clock. 3:47 p.m. Time to transform. The executive floor had a private locker room that Katie had been given access to 3 weeks ago. She'd kept a garment bag there since day one, waiting for this moment. The navy suit was Tom Ford, tailored perfectly to her frame, sharp enough to cut glass. She'd paired it with a crisp white silk blouse and her grandmother's pearl earrings. Her natural hair, which she'd kept in a simple bun as Kate, she styled into an elegant crown of curls that added inches to her height. The red-soled Louboutins added 3 more inches. She stood before the full-length mirror and barely recognized herself. Or rather, she recognized her true self for the first time in 3 weeks. This was KDC, Sloan, Regional Director. MBA from Wharton. 10 years of corporate transformation experience. The woman the board had hired to burn down the old guard and rebuild something better. She checked her reflection one last time, her expression hard. "Let's go to work," she said to her reflection. Johnson arrived at the executive boardroom at 3:58 p.m., fashionably almost late. The room was already full, the CEO, the board chair, the CFO, the head of HR, and the chief legal counsel. Every major power player in the company. His confidence wavered slightly. This was a bigger meeting than he'd expected. "Johnson, come in. Sit there." Robert Chin gestured to a seat in the middle of the table, facing the head position. Johnson sat, nodding greetings to the executives he knew. "What's this about, Robert?" The email was pretty vague. "We're making a major announcement about the company's future direction. Someone very important wants to address everyone personally." Johnson relaxed. Probably some new initiative. Another diversity workshop he'd have to sit through. The door opened. A woman walked in, and the room immediately stood. Johnson scrambled to his feet, confused. She was tall, commanding, dressed like power personified. She moved with absolute certainty, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. She reached the head of the table, set down a leather portfolio, and looked directly at him. His stomach dropped into his shoes. It was the intern. But it wasn't. "Please, everyone sit," she said. Her voice was different, deeper, authoritative, the voice of someone who expected to be obeyed. Johnson sat automatically, his mind racing. This had to be a mistake. Some kind of joke. The intern couldn't be. "For those who don't know me yet," she began, her gaze sweeping the room, "my name is KDC, Sloan. As of today, I am officially assuming my role as Regional Director of Tursan and Associates. For the past 3 weeks, I've been conducting an undercover assessment of our company culture." The blood drained from Johnson's face. During that time, operating as an intern named Kate, I've documented systemic patterns of discrimination, harassment, and hostile work environment behaviors that represent fundamental failures of leadership. She opened her portfolio, extracting a thick document. This report details 43 separate incidents across 17 departments. Some are systemic. Some are individual. All are unacceptable. Her eyes locked onto Johnson's. Some are fireable offenses. Katie let the silence stretch, watching Johnson's face cycle through denial, confusion, fear, and finally, desperate calculation. "Today," she continued, her voice calm and precise, "I experienced the clearest example of why this organization needed intervention." She recounted the presentation scene with clinical accuracy, every word Johnson had said, the client's reactions, the calculated humiliation. Several executives shifted uncomfortably. The head of HR was typing furiously on her laptop. "Mr. Miller, you told me that, you people, need to learn boundaries. When called on it, you claimed you meant interns. But your personnel file tells a different story." She pulled out another document. Johnson recognized it immediately, his file. 3 formal complaints in 5 years. 2 from black employees, 1 from a Latina analyst. All describing similar patterns of dismissive behavior, microaggressions, and hostile treatment. All quietly settled with NDAs and moved along. "Those were misunderstandings," Johnson said quickly, his voice tight. "I was cleared in all those." "You were protected," Katie cut him off. "By a system that valued your 12 years of tenure over basic human dignity. That system is over." She stood, and somehow she seemed even taller. "Johnson Miller, effective immediately, you are terminated from Tursan and Associates. Your conduct today, combined with your documented history of creating a hostile work environment, makes you fundamentally unsuitable for any leadership position in this organization. You can't, Johnson started to stand. Sit down. Katie's voice cracked like a whip. Johnson sat. Your severance package will reflect only what is legally required. Your access to all systems has been revoked. You will surrender your badge, your laptop, and your company phone to security. 2 officers are waiting outside to escort you from the building. You will not return to your desk. Your personal items will be boxed and shipped to you. This is insane. Johnson's voice rose. You can't fire me over a misunderstanding. I have rights. I'll sue this company into the ground. Katie's expression didn't change. You're welcome to try. Discovery should be very interesting for you. She nodded to the door. It opened, revealing 2 security officers. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Miller from the building. Johnson looked around the table desperately, searching for allies. Every executive avoided his eyes. The board chair nodded to security. This isn't over, Johnson hissed as he stood, his face red with humiliation and rage. You think you can just waltz in here and... Mr. Miller, Robert Chen interrupted quietly, you're embarrassing yourself. Go. The walk to the door was the longest of Johnson's life. As he reached the threshold, Katie's voice stopped him. Mr. Miller. He turned, hating himself for responding. Katie's smile was cold. You were right about one thing. I did need to learn how the real world works. Consider this lesson 1, actions have consequences. Even for people like you. The door closed behind him with a decisive click. Katie waited until the sound of Johnson's footsteps faded completely before turning back to the room. That, she said calmly, is the first and last termination I hope to conduct in such a public manner. But it was necessary. Johnson Miller's behavior today exemplifies exactly why this company needed outside intervention. She opened her portfolio to a different section. Over the next 90 days, we will be implementing comprehensive reforms. New harassment reporting systems with third-party oversight. Mandatory bias training for all management, and I mean actual training, not a 2-hour video you can sleep through. Diverse hiring panels for all positions. Transparent promotion criteria. And most importantly, accountability at every level. She looked at each executive in turn. Some of you facilitated the culture that protected people like Johnson Miller. Some of you looked the other way. Some of you were complicit through silence. That era is over. You have a choice, evolve with this company, or find employment elsewhere. The CFO, a white-haired man named Gerald who'd been with the company for 20 years, cleared his throat. Ms. Sloan, some of us have been concerned about the culture for years. We just didn't have the authority to. Then use your authority now, Katie interrupted. I'm not here to wage war against everyone. I'm here to fix what's broken. But I need actual allies, not people who claim they would have helped if only they'd had the chance. The chance is now. She gathered her materials. The Brennan clients, by the way, have requested a follow-up meeting. Apparently, what they witnessed today concerned them greatly, not about the company's viability, but about whether we deserve their business. I'll be meeting with them personally tomorrow to assure them that the Tursun and associates they'll be working with is not the company they saw this afternoon. Robert Chen stood. I think I speak for the board when I say we have full confidence in your leadership, Katie. What do you need from us? Your public support. Your willingness to make hard decisions. And your commitment to transparency. The next 3 months will be uncomfortable. Change always is. But the alternative is watching this company die slowly of its own toxicity. She closed her portfolio with a snap. We're done here. My office is now open. Anyone who wants to discuss the transition can schedule time through my assistant. Anyone who wants to lodge a complaint about Johnson's termination can speak with legal. And anyone who thinks they can continue business as usual should update their resume. She walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. I want every intern, assistant, and junior employee in this company to know that what happened today is not an exception. It's the new rule. No one is too powerful to be held accountable. No one is too junior to be heard. That's the culture we're building. She left the room to absolute silence. At 6:47 p.m., Katie sat alone in her new office, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Her phone buzzed. A text from the Brennan client, Dr. Patricia Morrison, the black woman who'd witnessed the presentation disaster. Whatever you just did, I hope it was decisive. We're moving forward with the contract, but only if you're the primary contact. That company needs you. PM. Katie smiled and typed back, it was. And thank you. You won't regret this. Another text came through, this time from her mother, baby girl, I heard through the grapevine you started your new job today. How'd it go? Katie laughed, the sound surprising her. Mom, I had to fire someone on my first day. Good for you. Your grandmother would be proud. Dinner Sunday? Wouldn't miss it. Katie set down her phone and looked at her reflection in the darkening window. For 3 weeks, she'd made herself small, invisible, powerless. She'd absorbed every microaggression, every dismissal, every moment of casual cruelty. But she'd also documented it all. Built a case. Prepared for this moment. And when Johnson Miller had finally gone too far, she'd been ready. She thought about what he'd said, you people need to learn boundaries. He was right, in a way. She had learned. She'd learned exactly where the boundaries were, and she'd learned that she had the power to redraw them. Katie C. Sloan, regional director, leaned back in her chair and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The old order was dead. The new order had arrived. And she was just getting started.